Oscar Wilde said, "You can never find yourself, you can only create yourself." And here's where a lot of people have it wrong. A lot of people are actually trying to find themselves. A lot of people are trying to figure out, who am I? They're trying to figure out what their personality is. This is why personality tests are so popular, is because people are trying to discover themselves. They're trying to discover their innate talents. They're trying to discover who they really are, so that once they've found themselves, they can then pursue the life they were meant to live. This is the traditional way that people set goals, is that they find their personality and then they set goals that fit with their personality. If you're an introvert, you set introverted goals. You pursue an introverted path in life. You base your goals and your future self on your current persona. That is the opposite way you want to do things if you want to transform your life and if you want to continually upgrade. Rather than basing your goals on your personality, a much better approach is actually to base your personality on the goals that you have for yourself. Rather than being so tied to your former self and saying, "This is who I am," you say, "Who is my desired future self?" Rather than basing your life and your behavior on your former life and on your former self and on your past, you base it on your desired future. That is a more powerful way to live your life. So you choose the goals you want. You choose the future you want. You choose the outcomes you want. You even choose the abilities that you want. You decide your future self, and then you base your current behavior on that. And as you behave in ways towards your future self, you will change. Your personality will change. Your personality is actually surface level. Personality is external. It's the outcome of what's inside. What's inside is your identity. Your identity is your story about yourself. And most people's identity is based on the past. Their identity and their story that they tell in their narrative is based on who they've been. A lot of it's based on their trauma. But very few people's identity is based on their desired future self. There's a psychologist named Robert Cialdini, and what Robert Cialdini has found in his research is that people really have a desire to be consistent. We have a desire to be consistent with what we say. Our actions are usually consistent with our words. And so if your identity and if the story you tell about yourself is about your past, then your behavior is going to be consistent with that. But if you start telling people about your goals, and this is one of the things that Robert Cialdini's found in his research, if you tell people about what you want to do in the future, you're going to have a desire to be consistent with that. And so your behavior will start being consistent with the words you tell. And so if you start telling people about your desired future self, about the person you want to be, then you're going to feel compelled socially, but also internally, to be consistent. It's a consistency principle that we want to be consistent with our words. And so by saying who your future self is, by saying who you want to be, you're going to feel compelled to align your behavior with your future self rather than aligning your behavior with your former self. Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge. Your imagination is more important than what you know. But the problem for most people is that they don't take time to imagine their future self. Actually, research from Daniel Gilbert at Harvard said that most people don't spend any time imagining their future self. And even worse, most people assume that their future self is going to be the exact same person they are today. So if I were to ask you, who do you think you're going to be in 5 years from now? You're going to probably say, well, I'm probably going to be the same guy I am today. If you're not imagining a new future self, and if you're not actually thinking about it, and thinking of yourself as a new and a different person, then you're probably not going to act in new and different ways. You're just going to be on the hamster wheel living a predictable life. You're going to continue to tell the same story of your former self. Your identity is based on the past, and so your behavior comes from your identity. Actually, your behavior and your identity are what are called a feedback loop. The story you tell about yourself shapes your behavior, but your behavior also reinforces your identity. So you can actually do two things to change your identity and your behavior. One is you can start telling a new story. You can imagine a future self with whatever situation you want, and you can start telling that story. That will then start to shape your behavior. But also you can start acting in ways that are outside your typical self. If you're someone who has never gone to the gym, maybe you get a gym membership and you start doing something that's outside your typical way of doing things. That behavior will send a signal to you that maybe you're the kind of person who goes to the gym. You can start waking up early. You can start investing your money into assets. You can start doing stuff that's courageous. Your behavior then can be a shockwave to your current identity and can start to really shake it up. And so it's really powerful. You can transform yourself so easy. People are not rigid. Your personality is not fixed. Your personality is very flexible. It changes regularly. It's just surface level, but people lock themselves in because they have a narrative about themselves that's so past focused. They don't imagine their desired future self as someone different. And so they're just acting in very predictable ways. Abraham Lincoln said that the best way to predict the future is to create it. So the first thing you want to do is start thinking about who is your future self. There's a great book called As a Man Thinketh. As you think, so you are. And so if you start thinking about your future self, if you start getting specific about it, if you start training those thoughts through journaling, through thinking, through meditating, and then if you start acting towards that future self, you're going to start changing your life. every time you think about your future self, you start writing about it, you start journaling about it, it starts to become more real to you. Then you start acting towards that future self, and you start having what are called peak experiences. When you start acting towards your future self outside your comfort zone, and once you start acting courageously, courage is the doorway to all change. Courage is always the doorway to change. David Hawkins has created what he calls this map of consciousness. It's a scale of emotions. And there's a bunch of negative emotions which create negative outcomes, and there's a bunch of positive emotions that create positive outcomes. Fear, shame, anger, all of those things are really low power emotions, and they create negative outcomes. The first step towards all the positive emotions and positive outcomes is courage. Courage is the doorway to change. Courage is the doorway to peace, acceptance, gratitude, love, joy. Courage is always the doorway. And so when you've imagined your desired future self, and if you're living your life based on imagination rather than former knowledge, and then once you start courageously acting towards your future self, you're going to start to transform yourself at the emotional level. You're going to stop wanting or needing the things your former self wanted. You're going to stop identifying with your former self. You're going to stop being so rigid about your current self. You're going to stop having what Carol Dweck would call a fixed mindset. People with a fixed mindset really care about who they are today. If I have a fixed mindset, then I say, this is who I am today and this is who I'm always going to be. My future self is the same person that I am today. Since I have this level of capability and this level of knowledge, my future self will be the same. That is a fixed mindset. A growth mindset means that you know your current self is flexible, you know your current self is temporary, and you know that your future self could be totally different in personality and knowledge and capability and skill and situation. You know that you can grow and transform and change in completely mind-blowing ways. When you have a growth mindset, you know your future self is going to be a totally different person than you are today. You know that they're going to know things you don't know. They're going to have skills you don't have. You know that they're going to care about things that you don't care about. They may be totally different in all ways than you are today. And you then start living with imagination and creation rather than being so rigid and dogmatic in who you think you are. So you, rather than having your goals be based on your personality or how you've defined your current personality, you want your personality to be based on your goals. Your goals are the thing that shape your identity. You decide, who do I want to be? And then you use that as the basis for your new identity. Your identity is the story you tell about yourself. Your identity is internal. Your personality is external. So you have these goals, these desires, these imagined visions, and you use that as the basis for your identity. You use your future self as the basis of your identity. So your identity is the story you then tell about yourself. It's how you identify yourself, and that then guides your behavior, and your behavior over time starts to become your personality. Your consistent behavior is your personality. And so if you change the vision of your future self, and if you start living by imagination and vision rather than just living based on the story of the past, then you're going to start acting courageously. You're going to start doing things way outside what you used to do. You're going to start having a lot of peak experiences. You're going to start exercising a lot of courage. You're going to start transforming how you see everything. And so that is basically the simple invitation, is to have your future self be the basis of who you are and what you do, not your former self. Who cares what your former self was doing? One super important thing to note in all of this is that you should never be angry at your former self. Just as an example, there's a lot of people with FOMO right now about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and they're like, why didn't my former self invest in that? There's no reason to be upset at your former self. Your former self did not know things that you now know. They were ignorant of things that you now know. And so rather than judging them based on your current knowledge, you should be compassionate about where they were, and you should also be grateful for what you've learned. You could apply what Dan Sullivan would call the gain in the gap, where you appreciate the gains that you've had. You've made huge gains. You've made huge progress. You've learned things that your former self didn't know, and now you can go and create bigger gains in your future. You can start imagining a different future self. Your future self as the person you want to be, with the capabilities, the situation you want to have. It's actually impossible to engage in what psychologists would call deliberate practice without having a visualized future self. You have to envision a future self with situations, with skills, with capabilities that you don't currently have in order to go through a process of learning and developing expertise. You've got to envision yourself in your future state, in your future capabilities, and then you reverse engineer a process. You start getting coaching, you start getting feedback, you start measuring, tracking, building systems to get to your future self. And through that courageous and intentional process, you'll start having lots of peak experiences. Those peak experiences will start to upgrade and transform you. You'll start to become psychologically flexible, meaning you'll become way more confident. You'll start to be flexible and adaptive and be able to imagine bigger and bigger goals and then pursue those way outside your comfort zone and not be derailed by it, or not just stay so tightly in your comfort zone. The more you go outside your comfort zone and intentionally pursue what you imagine for yourself, the more peak experiences you'll have. And as you have those peak experiences, you'll become way more flexible. You'll stop being so defined in your identity. You'll stop worrying about who you are today. Instead, you'll start being just more and more excited that yes, you are ignorant right now. That's okay. Yes, you don't have all the answers right now, but you are increasingly living your life based on intention, vision, design, excitement. And that is a beautiful way to live. Your goals should be the basis of your personality. Your personality should not be the basis of your goals. Don't overly define your current self. Don't have a fixed mindset. Don't get so stuck in who you think you are today. And certainly don't think that your future self is the same person you are today. Instead, imagine who you genuinely want to be. Allow that to be the basis of your identity. Your identity becomes the basis of your behavior. And if your future self is a way different person than you are today and has different capabilities and situation, if that's the basis of your identity, then you're going to have to start acting towards your future self, which is going to push you outside your current comfort zone. By the way, your comfort zone is your personality. It's what you're comfortable with. It's what's predictable. It's what's safe. And so if your future self is now the basis of your identity and your identity is the basis of your behavior, then you're now going to have to start acting in ways that are way outside your comfort zone, which is awesome because those are in alignment with who you want to be anyways. And those courageous-based and intentional behaviors are going to create peak experiences, which are going to open you up, help you become more flexible, help you become more confident, help you have a lot of peak experiences. This is how you live your life in a powerful way. Rather than just being on the hamster wheel, you're actually living. Yes, you're riding highs and lows. Yes, you're having exciting new opportunities, and also you're experiencing some serious failures. If you start living your life in this way with intentional creation and vision, and if you're acting courageously, yes, you will have some super low lows. You'll have some hard times. You'll have some big failures. You'll sometimes question yourself. That's why you need to get really good at becoming psychologically flexible, because then you can regulate your emotions. You can get better and better at not being so absorbed and controlled by your emotions, but you can enjoy them, even the hard ones. You can become mindful of them. You can journal. You can regulate your emotions. You can learn. You can integrate your learning. You can transform fast. It's crazy how fast you can learn if you're actively and aggressively learning. And that's really what true learning is. There's a difference between gaining knowledge and actually learning. A lot of people are just mindlessly gaining knowledge. We live on the internet. It's easy to just gain endless information. But active learning requires intentionally learning and approaching the things you want and applying it. And being courageous, going straight at it. The obstacle is the way, as Ryan Holiday would say. You go straight at it. There's another great quote on that from Robert Brault. He says, "We're kept from our goal, not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal." So we're kept from our goal. We're kept from what we want, not by the obstacles, but by clear paths to lesser goals. What you're probably doing and what most people are doing is you're pursuing lesser goals because they have clear paths. We all want clear paths. Psychology shows that. We all want a path to wherever we're going. And it's a lot easier to just take a clear path to a lesser goal than to go through the process and the obstacles of going to where we want to go. So we just take clear paths to lesser goals. We settle for who we are, for who we've been in the past, rather than continually imagining a new future and courageously pursuing that and having peak experiences and then finding a better path to where we really want to go. So your personality is not fixed. Your personality is based on your identity. Your identity is the story you tell about yourself. For most people, their identity is very past-oriented. But if you apply Albert Einstein's knowledge, which is imagination is more important than knowledge, and if you base your identity on your future self, on the goals you have, then your behavior can be based on your goals, which would be outside your current comfort zone, and it would be outside your current way of doing things. And then you could become a new person. You could transform yourself. You could have peak experiences. You could become more flexible, more confident, more capable. You could have ultimately whatever you want if you live by imagination and intention rather than having a fixed mindset. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Here's the next video to help you become your desired future self. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Down below, you can get access to my free peak state checklist, which will help you get into a peak state every single morning. It's been downloaded by over 800,000 people. Have an amazing day.